In the heart of liberal Los Angeles, California, a Filipino family found themselves as targets of a racist man while sitting at the Mcdonald's drive-thru. What initially started out as verbal harassment escalated into a full-blown physical assault that left multiple members of the family injured. And here's the kicker: the racist man that instigated this entire situation got away with it. Okay, so for some context, on the night of May 13, 2022, mother and daughter Narissa and Patricia Roque were in the drive-thru of their local McDonald's in North Hollywood, California, when suddenly a car rams them. The offending vehicle, operated by a racist man, pulls alongside the mother and daughter's car, and with the windows rolled down, the man begins to hurl racial insults at the two women.
Oh, you're so Asian.
Concerned at the escalating situation, they pull their car to the parking lot and quickly phone the police, in addition to calling Gabriel, Narissa's husband, to come and provide security from the increasingly agitated aggressor. Unfortunately, the aggressor, who had parked his car nearby, can be seen on the footage attempting to open the passenger door where Patricia is sitting. Just as he's doing this, however, Gabriel arrives, and within seconds, it goes from a verbal altercation into a full-blown physical fight. With Gabriel being easily taken to the ground by the taller aggressor, the mother and daughter are forced to intervene for his safety, and despite the assistance of one other patron, Narissa ends up getting throttled by the aggressor. The aftermath of the fight left all of the family members horribly shaken. Narissa had just been violently choked, and even worse, Gabriel was left greatly injured by his fall onto the parking block. This had left him with one fractured rib. Even worse, by the time that law enforcement arrived, the suspect had long fled the area. As you can see, this is already a horrible situation to be in, and to make matters worse, this family was never served justice after this. Remember, this incident took place on the night of May 13, 2022, and it wasn't until June 16th of that year where the attacker was finally arrested, and it wasn't even related to this attack on the family. You see, when the LAPD arrived after the attacker had left the scene, they actually classified the 911 call as a simple traffic collision. Ultimately, the attacker would only get a short stay in the county jail, and based on the information that I found online, he was actually eligible to be released later that month. So as you can clearly see, this situation is the definitive example. When you need the police in seconds, they're minutes away. This issue is also highlighted by the fact that Gabriel arrived to the scene faster than the police did. And this is where I'll bring my next point up. Have you ever heard of the concept of disparity of force? That's exactly what's being demonstrated here. Look at Gabriel, and look at the size of the attacker. A big difference in height, not to mention in strength as well. Gabriel is of course an elderly man, while the attacker is a younger man. In this situation, the use of pepper spray would have been perfect, considering that no one would have ever had to got close to the attacker. Another benefit is that even in a restrictive state like California, it's totally legal to carry pepper spray with you. They're easy to find, affordable, and discreet. Also, if you happen to end up using it against an attacker, it's a non-lethal solution, and you likely won't find yourself having to deal with the paperwork and stress that using lethal defense would otherwise cause. And speaking of lethal options, you could of course utilize a firearm or blade to fend off the attacker in a scenario like this, but as stated before, you run the risk of collateral damage and finding yourself in a legal quagmire if the law decides that you've done something wrong in defending yourself. These two options also present another risk of allowing the attacker to possibly obtain the weapon in what would be a nightmare situation. And as such, if you plan to carry lethal options, training is a non-negotiable element that you must have. As we saw in this case, no matter how much de-escalation the family attempted with the attacker, he was always going to follow them and escalate. Despite calling the police, the LAPD failed to arrive for them to witness and possibly stop the family from being physically attacked. And yet again, we see that law enforcement or even other passerbys and passing cars, they failed to intervene in this situation, proving that you really are your own first responder. Apart from one patron who can be seen on camera attempting to restrain the attacker, Narissa has stated that virtually everyone passing by saw what was happening and chose to do nothing. And do you remember how I earlier said that the attacker essentially got away with this? He was originally charged with hate crimes as an enhancement, in addition to the felony battery and DUI, and the judge in the case, Neetu Badan Smith, dropped the enhancements, saying that there was a 10 to 15 minute gap from when he verbally threatened them to when he physically attacked them. You often hear about how these more progressive cities proclaim that they're on the side of minorities, and yet in this case, the irony is that the attacker, a white man, was still given preferential treatment over the victims. So, as it turns out, these activists, judges, and politicians really do root for the criminal. Release them back into society so they can terrorize the public, all on your taxpayer money. And that's all I have for you today, and I hope you learned a thing or two about why you should carry. So until next time, be safe, be aware, and be a good citizen.